The denial sounded small, but it hit like a door slamming. "I'm sorry, Ms. Brooks," the loan officer said, not looking up. "We can't approve this." Renee Brooks felt her throat close. She stood at the counter with her paycheck stubs in a neat folder, her business plan printed on clean white paper, and her 7-year-old son Malik pressed against her hip, sleepy and hungry. Outside the bank's big glass windows, rain slid down like tears. Inside, the air smelled like coffee and shiny floors. Renee had practiced this moment all week. She had promised Malik, "After this, we'll get pizza, okay?" Because she believed they would leave with hope. Now she watched the loan officer slide the papers back like they were dirty. "But I meet the numbers," Renee said, voice low. She hated how quiet she sounded, like she was asking for a favor instead of asking for a fair chance. Malik looked up at her, confused, because kids can feel when grown-ups are trying not to break. The loan officer gave a tight smile. "It's the bank's decision," she said. "It's not personal." Renee wanted to laugh at that. It felt personal when the officer had asked twice if Renee was really the owner of her catering side business. It felt personal when the officer's eyes kept drifting to Malik, like a child in a bank was a warning sign. It felt personal when the security guard had walked closer and stood there, arms crossed, watching Renee like she might grab something and run. Renee kept her hands flat on the counter so nobody could say she was being aggressive. She had learned that lesson the hard way. "Is there someone else I can speak to?" Renee asked. "A manager." The loan officer's smile faded. "They'll tell you the same thing," she said. Behind Renee, a man in a suit huffed like Renee was holding up his day. Renee turned her head and saw the line of people, most of them looking away, pretending they could not see her standing there with a kid and a dream. Malik tugged her sleeve. "Mom, are we still getting pizza?" he whispered. Renee's eyes burned. She nodded anyway, because she didn't want Malik to learn that disappointment is louder than love. She gathered her folder with shaking hands. As she turned to leave, she caught her own reflection in the bank's glass wall, wet hair from the rain, tired eyes, and shoulders pulled tight like she was bracing for a hit. She told herself, "Not today, not in front of my son." But as the doors opened and cold air rushed in, Renee felt something worse than sadness. She felt the old, familiar message the world liked to give her: you can work twice as hard and still be told no. Renee wasn't asking for a miracle. She was asking for a normal life, a steady one. She worked mornings at a nursing home kitchen, hair wrapped, shoes squeaking on tile, flipping eggs for people who called her sweetie but never learned her name. At night, she cooked for her own small catering orders, birthdays, church events, baby showers using borrowed pans and a second-hand mixer that rattled like it might give up. She kept every receipt in a shoebox under her bed. She tracked every dollar in a notebook with a torn cover. When Malik was asleep, Renee sat at the kitchen table and watched videos on how to price menus and how to talk to customers. She wasn't trying to be rich. She just wanted to stop choosing between rent and school supplies. She wanted to stop lying to Malik with cheerful words like "maybe next time." The loan was for a tiny storefront in a strip mall near the bus line. Nothing fancy, just a place with a stove that worked, a fridge big enough for real growth, and a sign in the window: Brooks Home Cooking. Renee could already picture its steam on the windows, music low, Malik doing homework at a corner table while she worked. Some nights, that picture was the only thing that kept her moving. Her friends told her she was stubborn. Renee called it surviving. Renee had been a single mom since Malik was 2. His father left with a suitcase and a sorry that didn't pay bills. Renee never spoke bad about him in front of Malik, but the silence carried its own weight. She tried to fill the gaps with small joys: library trips, popcorn movie nights, long talks in the dark when Malik asked big questions about the world. Still, Renee could see the worrying in Malik's eyes sometimes. Kids notice when the fridge is loud because it's almost empty. They notice when their mom counts change twice at the checkout, and Renee carried another piece of history, too. Her mother's name sat inside her own like a stitched tin secret. Renee Patrice Brooks. Patrice. Renee's mother had died when Renee was 16, long before Moloch, long before the dream of a storefront. But Renee still heard her mother's voice when life got sharp. "Baby," Patrice used to say, "they can't deny your worth. They can only deny your access. Don't confuse the two." Patrice had said it with tired wisdom, like she had learned it the hard way. Renee didn't fully understand back then. She understood now. Because when Renee walked out of that bank with her folder and her son and her wet shoes, it wasn't just a loan that got denied. It was another chance to breathe without fear. The week before the bank visit, Renee had done everything right, at least on paper. She went to a free small business class at the community center, sitting under buzzing lights with other people who looked just as tired as she felt. A retired accountant named Mr. Ellis taught them how to make a simple plan: costs, sales, profit, and what you do if things go wrong. A business is a promise you make to your future, Mr. Ellis said, but you need numbers to back up that promise. Renee liked him because he talked straight. No fancy words, no jokes that made her feel small. He looked at her menu list and nodded. "You got a strong product," he said. "You just need space and steady equipment." He helped her clean up her credit report, too. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't trash. It was the credit of a woman who had paid what she could, when she could. While life kept throwing bricks, Mr. Ellis wrote her a letter of support. He even practiced the loan meeting with her, playing the part of the bank. "They might push your buttons," he warned. "Stay calm. Stay clear. Keep coming back to the facts." Renee laughed then, nervous. "I'm calm," she said. Mr. Ellis raised an eyebrow. "You're calm like a pot with a lid," he replied. "That's still calm, but don't let it boil over in there." The night before the appointment, Renee ironed her only good blouse, the blue one that made her look like she had more sleep than she did. Moloch sat at the table coloring while she laid out her papers in order: ID, pay stubs, tax forms, business plan, bank statements, list of current customers. Moloch looked up and said, "Mom, when we get the store, can I help?" Renee smiled. "You can be my taste tester," she told him. Moloch grinned. "That's the best job." Renee kissed the top of his head and told herself to hold on to that. She needed that light dot at the bank the next day. The building itself felt like a test. High ceiling, cold air, quiet voices. Renee told Moloch to use his inside voice, even though he already was. She sat in a chair across from the loan officer, a woman named Sandra with a smooth bun and sharp nails. Sandra asked questions that sounded normal, but the tone felt off, like Renee was already guilty. "Do you have a husband?" Sandra asked, smiling like it was casual. Renee blinked. "No," she said. "I'm applying based on my income and business." Sandra nodded slowly, then asked, "And who watches your child while you work?" Renee felt heat rise in her face. "My sister, and after-school care," she said. "I've arranged it." Sandra made a little note and said, like she didn't believe her. When Renee explained her catering income, Sandra asked for proof even though Renee had invoices and deposit records. Renee offered them. Sandra barely glanced. The whole time, Renee felt like she was on trial for wanting more than survival. Still, Renee kept her voice steady, like Mr. Ellis taught her. She walked out believing she had done enough. 2 days later, the denial came, and in that moment at the counter, Renee realized the bank wasn't just rejecting numbers, it was rejecting her. After pizza that day, Moloch fell asleep in the car, sauce on the corner of his mouth. Renee sat in the driver's seat outside their apartment building and stared at the steering wheel until her hands stopped shaking. Then she did what she always did when life tried to shrink her. She made a plan. She didn't scream. She didn't throw things. She opened her folder and read the denial letter again, slow. "Insufficient risk profile," it said. The words were clean and mean at the same time. Renee pictured Sandra's face, polite but closed. Renee pictured the security guard watching her like she was trouble. Then she thought of Patrice, her mother, and the way she used to talk about banks like they were weather systems powerful, unseen, and deadly if you got caught outside without shelter. Renee had always thought her mother was being bitter. Now she wondered if her mother had been warning her. Renee called Mr. Ellis, She kept her voice calm, but it cracked anyway. They denied me, she said. There was a pause on the line. Did they explain why, with details? He asked. Not really, Renee said. Just a label. Mr. Ellis sighed. Deep. Then we appeal, he said. And we ask for the file review. Renee swallowed. Do people win appeals? She asked. Sometimes, he said. But we don't do it because it's easy. We do it because it's right. They worked that night at the community center. Mr. Ellis helped Renee write a clean appeal letter. Renee added a page about her steady work history, her existing customer list, and her plan to start small. She didn't beg. She didn't threaten. She simply told the truth. At the bottom, she signed her full legal name the way her mother insisted she always should. Renee Patrice Brooks. Mr. Ellis mailed it certified to the regional office. Now they can't pretend they didn't get it, he said. 3 days later, in a quiet office on the top floor of the bank's headquarters, the bank president, Harold Crane, flipped through a stack of files his assistant had placed on his desk. Harold was the kind of man people called calm. His hair was gray and neat. His suit fit like he had never missed a meal. He had built his career on being steady, careful, and clean. He didn't like surprises. He didn't like mistakes. He especially didn't like complaints that hinted at unfairness, because unfairness brought audits, and audits brought light. Harold opened Renee's appeal file. He scanned her numbers first. Good enough. Not perfect, but not the disaster the denial made it sound like. He frowned. Then his eyes dropped to the signature line, and the air seemed to leave the room. Renee Patrice Brooks. Harold's fingers froze on the paper. His throat tightened. For a second, he could hear a different time in old office. Cheap carpet, and a manager's voice saying, "Not that neighborhood. Not those names." Find a reason. He saw a woman's face in his memory, proud and tired, holding a folder just like Renee's. Patrice Brooks. Harold's coffee cup trembled in his hand and tipped, spilling brown liquid across the corner of the desk. His assistant rushed in. "Sir," she asked. Harold didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed locked on the name like it was a match near gasoline. Because Harold wasn't just reading an appeal. He was looking at the ghost of a file he thought he buried. Harold Crane had spent 22 years building a life where no one asked hard questions about the early days. Back then, he was a young loan manager trying to impress the right people. The bank called it risk control. The neighborhoods that were mostly black got called unstable. The applicants with certain last names got called high risk. Harold told himself it was just policy. He told himself he wasn't making the rules, just following them. That leak kept him warm at night, until Patrice Brooks walked into his branch. Patrice had been wearing a plain coat and a brave face. She wanted a small home improvement loan. She had steady work. She had a plan. She even had a co-signer. Harold remembered how she spoke, clear and careful, like she knew one wrong word could be used against her. Harold's boss had leaned into Harold's office and said, "Lo, don't approve that. We don't need more of that in our portfolio." Harold had nodded like a good soldier. He denied Patrice's loan with the same clean words Renee got. Risk profile. Patrice didn't yell. She just stared at him and said, "You're going to sleep with this." Then she walked out holding her folder like it was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. Harold remembered that more than he wanted to, because a year later, Harold heard Patrice lost her rental after a string of repairs she couldn't afford. Then came an eviction. Then a short news story about a woman who died from asthma complications in an apartment with mold, after months of fighting with the landlord. The name in that story was Patrice Brooks. Harold never told anyone he knew her. He never told anyone he was part of the chain that pulled her down. He told himself it was sad, but not his fault. Life is hard, he told himself. People make choices. But now, seeing Renee Patrice Brooks on his desk, Harold felt fear for a simple reason. The past had paperwork. Patrice had filed a complaint years ago. Harold had misplaced parts of her file when compliance asked questions. The bank settled quietly with no admission of wrongdoing, and Harold was promoted to a different region before anyone could connect dots. He had convinced himself it was over. Now the daughter of the woman he denied was in front of him in ink and signature. Harold didn't know if Renee knew the history. He didn't know if this appeal was normal or a trap. His assistant hovered in the doorway, nervous. Harold wiped coffee with shaking hands and forced his voice to work. "Schedule her," he said, "tomorrow, in person, and pull the full denial notes from the branch. All of them." His assistant blinked. "Yes, sir." When she left, Harold sat alone and stared at the name again. He wasn't freezing because he cared about fairness, not yet. He was freezing because the truth, if it stood up, could take everything he had built. Renee almost didn't go to the meeting. When the bank called and asked her to come to headquarters, her first thought was, "They're going to waste my time again." She pictured Moloch sitting in another waiting area, bored and small. She pictured herself smiling through disrespect. But Mr. Ellis pushed her, gentle and firm. "This is your chance to be seen by someone higher," he said. "Not to beg, to be heard." So Renee took a day off work she couldn't afford to miss, borrowed her sister's car, and drove downtown with Moloch in the back seat, holding a book. The headquarters building rose like a cliff. Renee's stomach turned as she walked in. The lobby was too bright, too quiet, too cold. A receptionist led Renee and Moloch to an elevator, then to a wide office with a view of the city. Harold Crane stood when she entered. His smile was practiced, but his eyes looked tired, like he hadn't slept. "Ms. Brooks," he said. Renee shook his hand. His palm was damp. That surprised her. Powerful men usually acted like nothing could touch them. Harold gestured to a chair. "Please," he said. Renee sat, pulling Moloch close. Moloch swung his feet, watching everything. Renee kept her folder on her lap like a shield. Harold cleared his throat. "I reviewed your appeal," he began. "I have some questions." Renee nodded. "Okay." Harold looked at her file again, then at her face, like he was searching for something. "Your middle name," he said slowly. "Patrice." Renee felt her chest tighten. "Yes," she said. "That was my mom's name." Harold's jaw flexed. "Is your mother?" he started, then stopped. Renee's eyes sharpened. "Is she what?" Renee asked. Harold's gaze flicked to Moloch, then back. "I'm sorry," he said. "Is she living?" Renee's mouth went dry. "No," she said. "She passed when I was 16. Moloch looked up, still, hearing the tone even if he didn't know the story. Renee continued, voice steadier than she felt. "Why are we talking about my mother? This is about my loan." Harold's fingers tapped once on the desk, a nervous tick. "You're right," he said. "You're right." But he wasn't letting it go. "What did your mother do for work?" he asked, too quick. Renee stared at him. The question felt like a hand reaching into a closed drawer. "She worked 2 jobs," Renee said. "She cleaned offices at night and worked at a daycare in the day." Harold swallowed. Renee's eyes narrowed. "You knew her," Renee said, not as a question. Harold's face went pale. The room went quiet except for the hum of the building. Moloch stopped swinging his feet. Harold leaned back like the chair might save him. I worked at a branch years ago," he said. His voice sounded thin. "Your mother applied for a loan." Renee felt anger rise, hot and clean. "And you denied her," she said. Harold didn't answer fast enough, and that was the answer. Renee's hands curled around her folder. "My mom spent her life trying to climb out," Renee said, voice shaking now. "She used to say the bank didn't just say no, it pushed her down." Harold's eyes dropped. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Renee let out a short laugh with no joy. "Sorry doesn't fix a roof," she said. "Sorry doesn't clear mold. Sorry doesn't bring her back." Moloch looked between them, confused and scared. Renee placed a hand on Moloch's shoulder, grounding herself. "Now," Renee said, voice firm, "tell me why your branch denied me. With facts, not with feelings about my name." Harold looked up, and fear sat plain on his face, not fear of Renee's anger, but fear of what he had been. Harold asked for a break and stepped into a side room to call compliance. Renee watched through the glass as he paced, one hand on his forehead. She felt like her heart was too big for her ribs. Part of her wanted to stand up and walk out, to refuse to be a chapter in his guilt story. But another part of her, the part that paid bills, the part that carried Moloch, stayed planted. She had not come this far to be polite. She had come for a fair shot. When Harold returned, Two other people came with him, a compliance officer named Ms. Patel and a regional lending director named Mr. Simmons. They sat down across from Renee like this was suddenly serious. Because it was. Ms. Patel spoke first. "Ms. Brooks, we are reviewing your denial," she said. Voice calm. "We have concerns about the documentation used by the branch." Renee raised her eyebrows. "Concerns like what?" she asked. Mr. Simmons slid a paper across the table. "The branch coded your catering income as unverified," he said. Renee's stomach dropped. "I gave invoices and deposits," she said. They barely looked. Ms. Patel nodded once. "We also see notes in the file that are not appropriate," she said. "Personal notes." Renee felt cold. "Like what?" Ms. Patel didn't read them out loud at first. She glanced at Harold, then back at Renee. "Notes about family status," she said carefully. "Child care, stability." Renee's jaw tightened. "So being a mother is a risk," she said. Mr. Simmons shifted in his chair. "It should not be," he said. Renee looked straight at Harold. "But it is, when you want it to be," she said. Harold's voice cracked. "Ms. Brooks," he began. "Renee," he corrected himself, like he was trying to be human. "You deserve a fair review." Renee leaned forward. "I deserved a fair review the first time," she said. Ms. Patel held up a hand. "Steady. Here is what we will do," she said. "We will run your application through a clean process today, with proper verification, and we will also open a review of that branch's lending patterns." Renee's breath caught. "A review," she repeated. That sounded like real consequences, not just a fresh coat of paint. Ms. Patel nodded. "Yes," she said. "If there is bias, we will address it." Harold looked like he wanted to say something else and couldn't find the shape of it. Finally, he spoke, quiet. "Your mother," he said, eyes on the desk. "She should have been approved." Renee felt tears sting her eyes, sudden and sharp. She blinked them back. "You don't get to say her story now like it's just a lesson," she said. "She was a person." Harold's shoulders dropped. "You're right," he whispered. Malik tugged Renee's sleeve and leaned in. "Mom, can we go?" he asked. Renee softened at once, because Malik didn't ask for this pain. She squeezed his hand. "Soon," she promised. 2 hours later, Miss Patel returned with the decision. She placed a single page in front of Renee. "Approved," it said. Renee stared, not trusting her eyes. The room stayed quiet while the words settled into her bones. Approved didn't erase the past, but it changed the future. Renee looked up. "So it was never risk," she said. "It was the way they saw me." Miss Patel didn't deny it. Harold sat like a man who had swallowed stones. "Renee," Harold said, voice low, "I want to make this right." Renee stood, gathering her folder. "Start with the truth," she said. "And don't make my son grow up hearing no for the same reasons I did." The truth didn't stay tucked in that office. Compliance audits moved fast when the bank wanted them to. Within weeks, the branch that denied Renee was under review. Sandra, the loan officer, was put on leave while investigators pulled files and compared approvals by zip code, race, and family status. People inside the bank called it damage control. Renee called it about time. Harold Crane tried to keep his face calm in meetings, but inside, he was unraveling. He had spent decades stepping around his own choices. Now the floor was gone. Harold did something that surprised even him. He asked Miss Patel to reopen Patrice Brooks's old complaint file from the archive. It came in a dusty box with a label that looked harmless. The papers inside were not harmless. Patrice's handwriting was on one page, neat and angry. "I met every requirement. They treated me like a problem, not a person." Harold held that page for a long time. He remembered her eyes. He remembered the way he looked away. He remembered telling himself, "Everyone does it." That phrase sounded ugly now, like cowardice dressed as teamwork. Harold requested a private meeting with Renee again. This time, Renee brought Mr. Ellis, because she had learned not to walk into powerful rooms alone. Malik stayed with Renee's sister, in the same office. Harold didn't offer small talk. He placed a folder on the table and pushed it toward Renee. "This is a settlement offer," he said. "Not for your loan. For my mother's file," Renee corrected. "Sharp?" Harold nodded. "For what happened to Patrice Brooks," he said. For what I did, and for what the bank did. Renee didn't open it right away. You're doing this because you're scared, she said. Harold's eyes flashed with shame. Yes, he admitted. At first, I was scared. He swallowed. I saw your name and I felt like a thief caught holding the bag. Renee held his gaze. And now? She asked. Harold's voice shook. Now I'm still scared, he said. But I'm more scared of staying the same. Mr. Ellis leaned back, watching. Quiet. Harold continued, words slow, like each one hurt. I can't undo your mother's death, he said. I can't undo the chain of harm, but I can stop pretending it wasn't real. He slid another document forward. This is a plan for new lending rules, he said. No questions about marital status. No notes about stability that are code for we don't like you. Clear reasons only. And a review board for denials. Renee finally opened the settlement folder. The number inside made her inhale hard. It was enough to pay off old debts, fix her car, and give Malik a cushion she never had. Renee's hands trembled, not from greed, but from the strange feeling of being seen after years of being ignored. Renee closed the folder. I'll have my lawyer review this, she said. Harold nodded quickly. Of course, Renee said. I want you to understand something, she said. My mom didn't need pity. She needed access. Harold's eyes filled, but he didn't wipe them. I know, he said. Renee paused at the door and looked back. And if you're serious, she added, don't just fix the paperwork, fix the people. Harold nodded, like he finally understood that policies don't mean much if hearts stay hardened. As Renee walked out, she felt tired, but it was a different kind of tired. Not defeated, just done carrying what wasn't hers to carry alone. On opening day, the strip mall storefront didn't look like a movie set. The sign was simple. The paint on the door frame wasn't perfect. Renee's new oven hummed like a living thing, steady and warm. But when she unlocked that door and let the first customers in, it felt like sunlight after a long winter. The air filled with the smell of cornbread, greens, and baked chicken. Renee's hands moved with calm purpose, like they had been waiting for this place all their life. Malik stood behind the counter in a clean apron that said Taste Tester, grinning so wide his cheeks puffed. Mr. Ellis sat at a small table near the window, sipping sweet tea like it was a victory drink. People from the community showed up, neighbors, church ladies, co-workers from the nursing home kitchen, even the bus driver who had seen Renee carry grocery bags in the rain. They didn't come for charity. They came because Renee's food was good and because her story was theirs. Near noon, a black sedan pulled into the parking lot. Renee saw it through the window and felt her shoulders tense. Harold Crane stepped out. No tie, just a plain shirt, looking like a man trying to be smaller than he used to be. He walked in slowly, holding nothing but his hands. The room quieted in that way it does when people sense power enter, even when power is trying not to show itself. Harold looked around, taking in the crowded tables and the warm noise. He approached the counter and met Renee's eyes. Congratulations, he said, voice soft. Renee didn't smile. Why are you here? She asked. Harold swallowed. To say it out loud, he said. He turned to the room, and his voice carried just enough. My name is Harold Crane, he said. I'm the president of Crane and Harbor Bank. People stiffened. Renee watched Malik's face, curious and alert. Harold continued. This business is here because Renee Brooks did not quit, but she never should have had to fight the way she did. He paused, and you could hear a fryer crackle in the back. Years ago, I denied a loan to her mother, Patrice Brooks, he said. I hid behind policy. I was wrong. A low murmur moved through the room. Harold's eyes shined. I'm here to apologize to Renee and to honor Patrice's name, and I'm here to tell you the bank is changing its lending practices because what happened was not just unfair. It was harm. He looked back at Renee. I can't fix everything, he said, but I can stop lying about it. Renee felt her throat tighten. Part of her wanted to throw him out. Part of her wanted to collapse from the weight of hearing the truth spoken in public, where it belonged. She glanced at Malik, then back at Harold. Buy a plate, she said, voice firm. Pay like everybody else. A few people laughed, soft and relieved. Harold nodded. Yes, ma'am, he said, and stepped to the side to order. Renee watched him stand in line, quiet, waiting his turn. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't magic. It was something harder and more real. Accountability. Served plain, that evening. After the last customer left and the chairs were flipped onto tables, Renee locked the door and leaned her forehead against the glass for a moment. Her feet hurt. Her back hurt. But her heart felt steady. Malik came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "Mom," he said, "we did it." Renee turned and hugged him tight, breathing in the scent of soap and fries and new beginnings. "Yeah," she whispered, "we did." And the lesson, simple as it was, landed clear. Some doors stay locked because people decide who deserves keys. But when truth is spoken, and when courage refuses to shrink, those doors can open not because anyone grants worth, but because worth was there all along.